All right, are we on? There we go. All right, so that was our standard warm-up that we always do. So without further ado, it pleases me to say, without further ado, your Tournament Indoor Association Region 7 A-Class Jazz Band Championships. Champions. Here we go. The first tune we're going to do for you tonight is called Turning Point. You're going to hear from a couple soloists in that. You're going to hear from Christopher Ramos Barrios. You're going to hear from Hayden Van Arsdale on the trombone. And you're going to hear from Riley Callis on the alto saxophone. Enjoy. that saxophone section. They've been killing it all year. So our next two for you, speaking of saxophones, we're going to have an alto saxophone feature. This is a Billy Joel tune called New York State of Mind. You are going to hear from Eric Stroing first, and then Riley Cowles is going to take it home the rest of the way out. Please enjoy New York State of Mind. How about that? New York State of mind, folks. I'm not going to go through the whole story. If I find that too, it'll take forever. This is how we found it over the summertime. I was watching something, I showed it to these guys, and I said, "Do you want to do it?" And they're like, "Yes, please." So this band made it happen. Let me tell you something. It's an honor and privilege every week to be able to stand in front of this band and to be able to do what we do. And it is so sad knowing that tonight is the last time that this band in its form is going to be together. That's one of the hardest parts about being a high school band director, especially when your band is really, really good, is knowing that you're going to be losing people. And next year, next November, October, it's going to be completely different and start from scratch again. So I'm just enjoying everything I can while I'm up here with these guys tonight. So one more round of applause for our guys. Next up, we're going to have a blast from our past. One of the big things about jazz is improvisation, playing from what you feel here. So we're going to open this next tune up. This is something we did 5 years ago was the last time we did it. This tune is Larry Barnes, Abracadabra. On this one, you're going to hear from Ryan Conlon on the tenor saxophone. You're going to hear from Ian on the trumpet. You're going to hear from Hayden on the trombone. You're going to hear from Gilani on the trumpet, and you're going to hear from Nick on the trombone. So without further ado, Abracadabra. And no, this is not the T-Mode or the Chicago version. This is completely different, just disclaimers. Don't get excited. I think Bob wanted to come up, and I need Mr. Owen to come up here after our last tune. Before we close it out, I have a couple seniors I want to recognize. If you guys can just stand up real quick. This has been an incredible year for them. This is going to be an incredible loss for us because, as you see the end and you see the middle standing up. That generally means those are your lead players. So I am virtually losing all of the lead players in this jazz band this year. So, but we do have some great talent coming up underneath them, and hopefully take the reins and take it over and keep rolling on how good this band is. So, guys, thank you so much for everything. One thing about this band is it's a lot of fun. As you can tell, they're having a lot of fun on stage. You see the side conversations, they're encouraging each other. And that's one thing I absolutely love about this band is that we love each other, we have a good chemistry, and boy, do we have a lot of fun. So we're going to close this out with our last tune we normally do for our competition set, which is we're going to completely change the style a little bit. We're going to go to a bossa. So imagine yourself sitting on the beach, nice and relaxed, and this is going to be blue bossa. Oh, we have soloists on this film. Always forget this one. You're going to hear from Eric Stroy, Sarah Rush, and Brian Barry on the drum set. So enjoy. Goodbye. right, how about the Lacey High School Jazz Band? What a year it has been. All right, Mr. Olander, I believe you want to come up here, right? You guys want to have seats? Guys, what is this, our 10th? This was our 10th performance of the year, right? 10th or 11th, something like that?